finally. Time to take it out for a test drive. Mustafa? What are you doing here?
Such fine craftsmanship. It's mine now.
But why?
Because I can't build anything worth a damn. Now hand it over.
Don't be like this guy. In this video, I will be showing how to build sprocket tanks in Freeform, starting from the fundamentals of sprocket modeling and working up to complex examples that will make your tanks shine. Let's get started. Before we get started, there's a couple things that I need to cover. This video is a long one, and it is going to cover several basic topics at first. If you already know how to use the slope tool and the cube method, then you may want to skip to the techniques section of this video. This video was recorded in the Geometric Internals public alpha, which at the time of filming is hidden away in an opt-in branch of the game. A lot of you have asked me how to get to this version, and the process is the same as with any other Steam beta. If you're watching this in the future, in which case, congrats on not trusting AI for everything. You probably don't need to go through this process. Freeforming in Sprocket is a process that involves a combination of points, edges, and faces. It is similar to Blender and other 3D modeling software, with the main advantage being that you don't have to mess with setting up your lighting or deal with 99% of the interface. To get set up, select a compartment and click the Enter Freeform or Freeform Edit button if you're still in the generated mode. Now, you will see a bunch of lines running in between some red cubes. These red cubes are points, and they can be selected by right-clicking on them. Points are used to create edges, symbolized by these black lines. Faces are stretched between the edges, and these faces provide armor so that your Jacobs aren't blown up when shot at with a 75mm cannon. Now, if you haven't noticed already, selecting a compartment using the right mouse button brings up a panel full of expandable tabs and buttons that scream "Try me" louder than the toys at your local store. Before breaking down what all these buttons do, let's start by going over to the Edge tab. Now we can select the edges present on our compartment by right-clicking them. The process is similar for faces, where you go to the Face tab and right-click to select the face. Moving objects around involves using the translator tool to move an object along an axis. Let's start by selecting an object, select a point, and press the W key to activate the translation tool. In this case, it's already selected, so nothing's going to happen. Once you've selected an object, you can now move it along one axis by clicking and dragging an arrow, or, in this case, we can move it along two axes by grabbing and dragging a box. Some of you might be wondering why these arrows have red, blue, and green coloring on them. These colors correspond to what are called the axes that make up a typical three-dimensional space. The red X position correlates to rightward position. The green Y position correlates to forward and back position. And the blue Z position correlates to vertical position. Sprocket maintains industry standard coloring for the X, Y, and Z axes, meaning that you can take this to something like Blender and it'll stay the same. Keep this in mind for later when we get into fine-tuning object placement. The rotation tool is also available by pressing the D key. Here you have tools available to rotate your selection around an axis of choice. While this won't achieve anything for a singular point, it can be used to rotate a combination of points, which in this case is symbolized by this face. As you can see, if we switch back to the Points tab, Having multiple of them selected allows us to rotate them. Important to keep in mind is the rotation snapping toggle, which can be turned off and on with the Ctrl-D keybind. When turned on, rotations will be in increments of 15 degrees, but when turned off, rotations will be dependent on the dots per inch of your mouse, in other words DPI. If you ever wanted an excuse to purchase that $99 high DPI mouse, optimum precision on your builds is the perfect excuse to have. Now, object scaling is pretty straightforward in comparison. Press the Q key to switch to the scaling tool, or click the appropriate button on the bottom left of your interface. Click on a pawn and drag it to scale your points relative to the center of your selection. To scale an object in all directions, press the S key and drag the mouse cursor in or out. A huge note to remember is that during any of these operations, in this case let's activate the scale again, you can press the X, Y, or Z buttons to lock your movement to an axis. This is applicable to any translation movement, including stock parts. This tool is immensely useful, so keep this in mind for later as well. Now, what if you eventually end up with a ton of points and faces? Trying to edit them one by one looks a bit tedious, doesn't it? Fortunately, Sprocket offers a plethora of unique ways to simplify this process. We'll start by covering the Shift key modifier. Let's open up our turret here, and while holding down the Shift key, any selection operation will add to your existing selection. If you click over something already selected, those items will become deselected instead. Note that I described the Shift key as a modifier, because you can apply this to any of the following selection methods. Now, holding the Control key while selecting will also select everything that is coplanar to your selection. In other words, it will grab everything that is a part of the same slab of steel. Now, this isn't the greatest example, as rounding errors make it a little difficult to select the entire roof of this tank. What we'll need to do is increase the smoothing angle to 5 degrees. Close enough. Now let's try it again. We got most of the roof, so let's hold down Control and Shift simultaneously and grab the front bit of this turret. There we go. Now we can raise the roof and give it a top hat. Holding the Alt key while selecting will trigger a ring select. This tool is a bit finicky, as you have to make sure your mouse cursor is aligned with the direction of selection travel. For points, you have to select on an edge that is near your intended point, as in this example. Let's switch over to edges, where thankfully it's a bit easier to work with, because you just select an edge and then everything that extends from it will be selected. For faces, you have to select on your face near the edge that you want to travel down. You can hold Shift while doing so, and then select multiple rings or deselect them at the same time. Selecting all attached geometry is pretty simple. Hover over what you want to select and press the L key. You can hold Shift to repeat this multiple times. Alternatively, you can just press the A key to select all geometry that is a part of your selected compartment, or use it to clear your selection if you have anything selected at all. We can go back and forth between here, and then Shift L to deselect, or reselect. Selecting lots of points in a general area quickly can be achieved with a circle tool. Use the C key to activate this tool, and it will lock your camera in place until you press the escape key. Hold the mouse button and drag the circle across the screen to select your points, faces, or edges depending on what mode you're in. Points and edges are selected if the circle simply touches them, while faces are selected if the circle crosses their center point, which makes it a little more finicky to do, but oh well. This tool does not wipe your existing selection, meaning you don't have to hold the Shift key while using it. So I can repeat this multiple times, hit escape, it keeps it, and then press C and it's still there when I go to select more in the back. If you want to remove anything from your selection, hold down the middle mouse button instead of the left mouse button and drag your cursor around. Box selection is another tool that allows for quickly selecting items in a specified region. Use the B key to activate this tool, and similarly to the other one, it will lock your camera in place until you press the escape button. Most traits will carry over from the circle tool. Oh, looks like I activated the wrong button there. The box tool behaves similarly, such as with the middle mouse button deselecting, and the additive selection being the default. Last but not least, what if you want to select all but a couple faces? Instead of going around and selecting everything else, you can just select what you don't want and invert it. So in this case, press the Ctrl-I keybind and it has inverted our selection. So now it only shows the faces that we didn't have selected before. That is all of the selection tools. We will be making extensive use of all of those in a bit. Next, I'm going to go into detail on all of the freeform editing tools available. Well, the ones I haven't covered yet anyways. Down here in the Parts tab, we have Unobstructed. The flip and auto flip buttons are not exactly useful for add-on structures, and for turrets they don't even show up, so we'll just ignore those. Next up, we have the Rivets tab. This is a very interesting tool that allows us to place pre-generated rivets onto faces. Let's see if we can put some on the front bottom plate of this hull. As you can see, it has a lot of obstructions to it. You can either select a couple faces like this and just generate rivets onto those faces. Let's space them out a bit more and decrease their diameter and maybe their height too. Or you can select nothing and then generate all over the vehicle. For this one, it's a bit messed up because of all the geometry. So let's undo that. This tool is not the main focus of this video, so I'm going to skip over some more details for now. Speaking of that, if you want to see me make a general beginner's tutorial for Geometric Internals, let me know in the comments section. Next up, the Info tab shows us some basic information about the compartment, such as its dimensions and armor mass. This tool also gives us some useful information specifically for points, edges, and faces depending on what mode we're in. Right now we're in the face mode, so face selections will show the slope of a face if we go and select it. As we can see here, the front slope of the lower glacis plate is 36.6 degrees, which makes sense if you look at it from the side. If we switch over to the Edge tab, and select an edge, it'll show us the length of the edge both in coordinate form and in raw form. Now if we go over to points, if we select 2 points, it gives us an edge, and then if we start selecting more of them, it'll start adding up the totals as we go around this face. Next up, let's go to the Edit tab, and down here, this hidden away menu called the Position tab that we need to click on to expose. This tool is surprisingly useful because it gives us these sliders that allow us to directly control the position of whatever we have selected. In this case, we can drag the Y slider and move it forward or move it back. These sliders allow us to move points to an exact location relative to the origin point of the compartment, which in this case is somewhere down here in the bottom center of the hole. Typing in numbers allows us to set the intended number. So in this case, if we want it to be 3 meters out, we just type it in and hit enter. This is extremely useful for building replicas that have exact dimensions that you need to match. Selecting multiple points like we did here leaves the origin point right about in the middle between them. So if we go and select another point like way off here, now it's just floating out in the middle. Further up the editing tab, we have the geometry mirror toggle. This is a bit different from the parts mirror toggle, since this one controls parts while the other one controls freeform points. As you can see here, when I have it enabled, both parts will move back and forth when I have one enabled, but if I go and disable it, now only one moves along with it. Related to this is part repositioning. When placing a part onto a face, the part is technically bound to that face whenever you go and edit freeform geometry like this. Obviously, it can mess things up a bit, so if you disable it, that won't happen anymore. Smoothing angle is mainly related to how the game renders curved surfaces, such as the ones on this turret. As the smoothing angle is increased, this affects whether the curved surface appears blocky or smooth. This not only affects visual style, but also affects shell penetrations a small amount. Selection tools are impacted as well. The planar select tool will factor in the smoothing angle when grabbing faces. Next up are all the big buttons up here at the top, offering useful tools that can make freeform editing exponentially easier. These buttons will vary between what mode you're in. As you can see here, they're all switching, and corners doesn't really have any. We'll get to that later. We'll cover the mode-specific ones later after we go through the ones that can be found on all of them. The first one, which is right here, the X button, is, well, the delete tool. This tool can also be triggered through the delete key on your keyboard, and let's go to the faces to demonstrate. The result is as expected. The duplicate button is next, and this also has a Shift+D keybind. This allows you to create a detached copy of whatever you have selected. Once you have your selection, you might be wondering what to do with it. Fortunately, you can press the X, Y, or Z keys and restrict its movement to a single axis. This also applies to moving parts, editing geometry, and the extrude tool. We'll go over to the Faces tab to do that. You can see it is here in the middle, and you can also use the E key in order to do it. Using this tool, you can create new meshes that remain connected to the source. Extruding points will get you lines. So in this case, press E. Now we just have some little lines sticking out. We go to that line and extrude it, you get a face. Well, not with the X, but with that one we can get it. And extruding faces will get you an enclosed volume. Sometimes it's a bit buggy though with mirroring, you need to watch out for that. The hole tool lets you make holes in the tank without the more obvious solution of using a cannon. Start by selecting the points, edges, or faces around where you want the hole to be, and press the button. You can use the Hole tool to fill in a gap or replace existing faces. So we can go back, delete this face, and while we still have the edges selected, make the hole again. Let's go to points and try that again, and make another hole. You might notice that this hole has more points on it, and this is expected behavior when you select more points to fill in. This tool is by far the simplest way to create a hole for your turret basket, which is very important to prevent all of your turret stuff from colliding with the hole. We will be using this tool extensively later on. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of a keybind that activates this tool yet, but this may change by the time you're watching this video. Now, what if you didn't like something that just happened? Maybe you accidentally merged the entire compartment into a black hole. Fortunately, Sprocket has an undo keybind. Simply press Ctrl Z or Ctrl Y and that will undo or redo the step that you just did. Keep in mind that you can only undo a certain amount of steps, but let's be honest, most undo tools are like that. It's not like there's software out there which simply doesn't have undo at all. Unique to the points menu is the fill tool. If you have 3 or 4 points selected, you can press F or click the button over here to create a face connected to the selected points. The weld tool, which may also just be called the merge tool, allows you to unify all selected points into the last selected one. This tool can also be triggered by the M button. If you used a bulk selection tool like Ring Select, or like what I did earlier where I just selected everything, and if you want to change what point gets merged into, hold Shift and double right click that point. So in this case, let's unselect all of these and select that one last and merge, and suddenly everything is now condensed into this one little point right here. How exciting! The Edge editing menu has a couple special tools of its own. The Split tool allows for taking an existing edge and splitting it down the center, leaving you with a ring selection of the new edges that resulted from the split. The button is accessible over here at the very end of the Edge Edit menu. And keep in mind that as of filming, splits are not mirrored at all. You'll need to make sure that you perform splits on both sides of your compartment if you wish to maintain its symmetry. Next we have the Mark Weld and Clear Weld tools. Despite their name, they're only used in conjunction with the smoothing angle. If you have a curved surface, such as the side of this cupola, and want to add a sharp edge in somewhere that ignores the smoothing angle, you can mark it as a weld, and as you can see, there's now a little crease there. To undo it, you can instead clear the weld. This situation becomes a little more obvious when we increase the smoothing angle. As you can see here, without a weld, it's nice and smooth. But if we mark one, it's now pretty visible. The Face Editor introduces the Flip tool. As shown before, all faces have a physical thickness, which allows for plenty of shenanigans that I'll cover in detail later. By default, this physical thickness is extruded into the vehicle. By selecting the faces and flipping them, you can invert which direction this physical thickness gets extruded. Man, this is quite the tongue twister. Hole generation currently has a bug that causes faces to also be flipped when generated. So to fix this, simply select all of the faces using the planar select tool and then flip them. And now, the Corner Editor. Because it's not feasible to get armor extrusion correct 100% of the time, this tool was added to allow the user to correct how armor gets extruded. Most of the time you can safely ignore this tab, but if you have odd interactions between faces, such as what we're seeing here on this mantlet, then you should make use of this tab. The easiest way to do this is to go into the points editor, select the problematic points. In this case, let's just grab these guys. And then jump over into the corners editor. This drop-down menu over here lets you adjust how the points extrude. It's best to start off with auto, which is the default, then try face normal, which is up at the top, or point normal first. If this doesn't do exactly what you're hoping it will do, play around with the different options and see what it does. In this case, we had to use lengthways. Now, that worked for most of them. There's still a little buggy bit there. I like how Edge Auto works for this one. Or not. Alright, we've made it through the basics of the Freeform editor. Now, this tutorial video has been split into a two-part system. The first part was set up to cover nearly all of the possible tools that are available to use. The next part, on the other hand, will be covering how to use those tools to build whatever you can think of. I will start with some of the simple examples of making freeform parts and build up towards some complex examples. Remember that Sprocket is a game that involves practice, experimentation, and exploration in order to learn. Don't hesitate to make backup versions of your vehicle, well, do this anyways. Play around with modeling the geometry a bit to get a desired shape, and revert to an older backup if it doesn't work. There's many different ways that you can approach modeling an object, so don't hesitate to experiment and see what works best for you. To get our feet wet, this little guy could use some fenders, as the ones it currently has are cutting it a bit close to the wheel. So what we're going to do is make some custom ones out of an add-on structure. Let's start by stripping these guys off, and to do this we're going to just start out with a basic cube. We're going to want to just place it anywhere. The back should work fine for now. We can move it when we're at the right point. We're going to take this edge, split it, take this edge and split it, take this edge and split it, grab these two faces and delete them. So now we don't have to worry about symmetry issues that much. Next we're going to want to move that add-on structure into a point where it's not in the way and not really visible. I think down here should work fine. And with that there, let's now move these into position. Assuming the mirroring does not break as we run through this, we can probably just work on one side, and the other side will mirror along with it. We're going to want to have this slightly wider than the existing track so that it does not rub. And we'll want to start by making a rough shape of how the tracks are meant to look. Now let's extrude along the y-axis. And there we go. We're going to pick a round cupola and rotate it 90 degrees. Aligning it up with the side. We can now use this to get a somewhat smooth estimation of the curve that we should be following. Oh, mirroring has broken on that side too. There we go. And before we make the side, we're just going to go straight into this. Let's make some extrusions. Going to follow the contour of these cupolas. That gets pretty close. We can now split these edges to increase our accuracy by a little bit. And now let's make a few more adjustments to get the curve all nice and smooth. There we go. Now we can remove these cupolas, and let's go back here. Extrude down the Z. And let's move it back up just so we can still access this point. Now we're going to fill these in one at a time. Now to finalize it, let's just drag this down a little bit. And there we go. It does look like we need to fix a couple things with how these are extruded. So let's start by increasing the smooth angle. That's done a nice job. Let's select these top faces and give them a thickness of, how about half an inch. If we want to give these some side protection, we press E, press Z, and move them down like this. And then go to our points, select all of these, select this one last, and then merge. And it looks like we have to repeat on the other side. Now we have some custom fenders that add a little more wiggle room for the tracks to be able to, well, do their job. Do you think this vehicle has enough fancy cylinders on it? I think not. Let's give it another. Over here for the add-on structures, let's place down a cube. We're going to need to move this little guy out of the way. That guy just not move anywhere? Oh, that's why it's a turret. Okay, now we have a hole to put it in. Let's go to... no, let's press A, delete, and now we have a 1 meter plane. Let's move it out of the way a little bit. Go to faces, select the face, make a hole, and then make another hole. Now let's go into edges, select one edge, and then select the ring, extrude, and press Z to lock it in place. And now we want to lock these to 1000 millimeters Z height. There we go. Now let's go back into faces, select these, and delete them. Now we have a tube. How do we make this into a cylinder though? We will go up here to edges, select the whole ring again, extrude, lock to Z, and then go to points. Here we will want to unselect and reselect one point, press M to merge, and then set the Y position to 0. Then set the Z position to 1000. It is now completely flat. We'll go down here and repeat. Now we have a basic cylinder. Let's increase the smoothing angle a bit, and now it's all nice and smooth. We are going to save this as cylinder. Let's add some ventilation to this Matilda Walker no decals variant. Okay, let's see how this looks. Perfect. We can pretty easily add a split here. And now what we're going to do is grab these faces. Let's Let's get their position real quick. So Z position is 2802. Extrude, move it up just a little bit. Scale it down, and then reset this position to 2802. And then delete them. Now we have a little hole in here that we can see all the internals with, and we're going to cover this hole with a vent. Let's place another cube down, make sure it did not mirror, exit out of here, enter here, select everything, delete it, and now we have a plane. And let's start by shaping it to the size that we need. Okay, so we've got our dimensions all set out. Now what we're going to do is adjust it so that one edge is right on the origin point of the entire compartment. And then we're going to just set that right over the edge. Now we're going to go into edge mode and do a bunch of splitting. Now let's do about 32. Alright, now let's repeat the other way. We're going to go to about 8 this time. Alright, so we've got ourselves a nice little grill basically. So what we're going to do is select these, scale them out just a little bit more. And then repeat here so that we have a similarly distanced boundary to work with. And just for safety, let's split this one more time. And then scale them out just a little bit to maintain symmetry. Next, what we're going to do is take these, drag them out a little bit more, and then select these and bring them in. Now what we're going to do is select these and delete them. This is how we'll start forming the grill. It's not going to be the fanciest, but it'll work. We have a nice little grill now, so if we want to, we can now set up a hinge for it so that it can open up normally, which that's pretty easy to do with just some parts. And there we have it. An alternative approach to making this grill would be to start by removing all of these faces so that we can string lines between them and extrude them down. We are now left with a bunch of points that are circling the edge. Oop, looks like I missed a couple. We are now left with a bunch of points circling around the new hole. What we are going to do now is use the fill tool and string a bunch of lines between them. And to space them out a little bit more, let's move them here. Now we're going to want to box select again, like that. Let's get a little angle to the side here. Now we're going to hit E to extrude, and then Z to move them down. Now to give them a little slope, we're going to move them off to the side a bit. And there you have it. We now have an angled and rotatable ventilation. Let's add a pike nose to this panther. Down here, we're going to want to start by going to faces, selecting these, and Scale them along the y-axis so that they are straight up with a slope of 0 degrees. Let's move them forward a bit, and we'll want to go into points, move these two down on the side, move this one up a little bit, and because it's going to be an issue for us, we're going to turn down the slope angle for now. Back to faces, let's select them and press H to slope them forward again. Paying attention to the slope angle on the side, we are now at 55 degrees. We'll keep this number for now. What we're going to do is start by moving this forward. And in order to get it properly aligned, we're going to come down here and just look down the edge until it gets almost exact. I think that's pretty close myself. I don't know why the shift button was held down in the keyboard logger, but oh well, that seems to be a big issue with some of these clips. Sorry about that. It's 48.4, 49.6. So they're off by about a degree. Let's select that point again, move it back a little. And now they're off by 0.2, so super close. Let's move it forward just a tad bit more, and now they're dead on. Perfect. Now we need to try and replicate that slope up here. This is just a lot of finicking around with the points to try and get them as close as possible. Alright, we have this exact same angle up here, and it's just a little bit off from the ones down here. So what we're going to now do is move these forward just a bit. And now all 4 slopes on the front are the exact same. And that includes down here. The last part is getting these faces aligned, which is surprisingly easy because now we can just move the camera and align it right down this edge. Let's drag this into place. And unfortunately, this is not mirrored, so we are going to have to just deal with that and do all 4 points. Let's check the faces one last time. All of them are 49.1 degrees. Perfect. We now have a Pike Nose Panther, ready to go and fight the Germans. Or the Soviets. Which one is it this time? Before we move on, I want to mention a few more things before we start moving into some complex designs. I've shown the use of add-on structures before. They are generally the best way to add details onto a vehicle without those details being locked onto a compartment. Once you have the add-on structure built, you can move it, copy it, or save it as a prefab part that can be placed onto other designs. I recommend using add-on structures frequently as these benefits are hard to overlook. If you want to add a new part to a vehicle, but with the geometry still linked to another compartment, older versions of Sprocket typically require you to use a complex method known as the cube method. Nowadays, there are much simpler ways to go about this. Simply take a face on your compartment, duplicate it, and then extrude it along the desired axis. Now you have a floating cube that you can mold into any shape you wish, and it's still linked to the original compartment. It's worth noting that there used to be a soft limit of 5,400 points per structure with early Geometric Internals builds, and breaking that limit might as well have been summoning the Kraken. This limit has since been increased into a number sitting somewhere in the millions, so this problem is irrelevant. You shouldn't have to worry about adding thousands of points onto a compartment anymore. Something to keep in mind is a technique called stitching, where instead of manipulating faces, you create a bunch of points floating around and stitch them together by filling in faces. This is particularly useful when trying to match replica designs and create complex shapes that aren't easy to make otherwise. For example, here's how to use stitching to make a cylinder. What I've done here is taken a base plate, split it down the middle, and extruded the 2 points on the sides up. Paying attention to their position, they are at 2,000 millimeters height. I then made a copy of them so that they're at 3,000 millimeters height. And in between them, the center point is 2,500 millimeters. I then took the points on one side, used Shift D to duplicate them, shift them up a little bit by pressing the Z button, and then rotated them. From there, I used the entry button on the side for position to lock them back down to 2,500, and then repeated this process a bunch till I had a full circle on both sides. From here, it's a simple process of just filling in. Another tool to keep in mind is that the physical thickness of a plate can also be used as detailing. Say you want to make a functioning crew hatch that opens up to reveal your severely traumatized driver. Once you create the upper shape for your hatch, all you have to do is increase the thickness of the faces and now your hatch is fully complete. This is way more efficient than trying to make the full model of the hatch. Anyways, let's move on to some more complex examples. Continuing with the theme of putting Soviet equipment on German tanks, let's take this Leopard and give it a Soviet turret. First we gotta strip this actual turret off somehow. There we go. Goodbye. We have a flat plate to work with. Let's scale it up, go to faces, and flip it so now that we have the bottom. What we're going to do next is select all the edges and extrude them upward. We're going to have this turret be about 600... Let's do 800 millimeters tall for now. We're throwing a big gun into this thing today. We are going to reuse the stitching technique from earlier. So let's Shift D, Y, oh, it kept the points with it. We'll do this one at a time then. Shift D, Y, and we want to set these to 1600. Repeat down here. One at a nope, just one. Using the cylinder stitching technique from earlier, let's make us a ring of points. Alright, we now have a nice little ring of points, but we're not actually going to use all of these. And we're actually going to do a box select on these guys. So these points are no longer needed, so we are going to delete those. And now begins the process of filling all of these in. We have all of these points now. What we're going to do, we're going to lose just a little bit of accuracy as a result of this. We're going to rotate them just a little bit sideways and move them in. Same time, actually, let's slide them back again, because they're a little bit far forward for what we need. The contour of our vehicle is starting to take shape now, so let's fill in these top bits and keep going around. Alright, let's go fill in a little more back here so that we have a complete shape to work with. We'll come back to the back half of the turret later. For now, let's get the front half going. Now we're going to go on the edges, split, split again, And now we're going to make sure they are flat as can be. So now we're going to slightly extrude these downward so that a mantlet can fit in there. And then we're going to take these guys, extrude them all the way back with the Y, flatten them out a bit, and then delete them. Now we're going to also take these and extrude them back using Y. And now it looks like we have a bit of geometry to clean up. Oh, that should make a good start for our mantlet. We'll come back to this after finishing the back half of the turret. Alright, let's work on adding a custom mantlet once we throw a gun in here. Let's get this gun nice and aligned to the center lines. Alright, it's colliding because we forgot to add a hole in the base plates. Delete that. What we're going to do is only select these, make a hole that way, scale it to fit our turret basket. I don't know why it makes the weird holes like that just jump across, so let's get rid of that guy. For some reason it still leaves the edges, so let's also get rid of those. And now begins a filling in process. Alright, there we go. Now we have some nice traverse availability for this turret. Let's give it a little more depth and then we're good to go. I like the 120mm caliper, so let's keep that and increase the segment length and probably reduce its thickness just a little bit more. With our gun now in place, let's move on to adding the mantlet. We will take an add-on structure, get it as close as we can to the middle because like the gun, it's also not mirrored yet when placed on here. And we also need to account for the fact that on this segment it goes on at an angle, which is bad, so we need to place it on a static segment that maintains the same thickness throughout. So now it's level. Remember that cylinder from earlier? We are going to need it again. Let's grab everything and make sure it is centered. Next, let's take everything, turn off mirroring, because it's otherwise going to bug out when we do this. Rotate it, turn mirroring back on, and hope it works. And then shift that into place. Now, when we shove it back in there, it's going to collide with the gun. So what we have to do is take the faces we don't want and wipe them. And there we go. That's a pretty good start. Now we probably want to drag this back out because an issue we would run into leaving it like this is it'll just clip on the sides. So we probably should take these faces out as well. make it feel more like an actual mantlet. Let's scale it up a little bit. And give it some thickness. How about 90 millimeters? And kind of like we did earlier, let's take these edges, split them, and make things a little more high poly. This is kind of a cheap way to do it, but there's other ways that you can subdivide a cylinder to give it a little more definition. Keep in mind that this also makes the edges jagged, so you have to take them and smooth them out. And as we are finding out now, mirroring is not working, so that may be an issue for some builds. Let's decorate it up a bit. Let's slap some and there you have it. We now have a Soviet turret placed onto this hull. And an unfortunate ammo rack reappearance. I hope you have found this tutorial useful for your Sprocket building endeavors. This video has been in the works for over 7 months now, and I want to give immense thanks to everyone who has helped to make this video possible. Let me know in the comments section if you want to see more tutorials like this. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and hopefully my next video won't take so long to get out. Thanks for watching, and see you all soon!